And I think that's absolutely right. Those are the two principles, and he understood. They're completely incompatible. We have to become one or the other.
Do you have any advice for this AAPI audience for how they can get into public service?
Just get into public service. I discovered you don't need anybody's permission, and if you wait for somebody to ask you, well, you'll be waiting a very long time. But I would urge this. Know why you're getting into public service. Ask yourself that question. Why is it that what is compelling me to do this? And be darn sure that the answer to it is to be part of a cause bigger than yourself, because that is the only joy in politics. It is a nasty, brutal business. And it's getting nastier and more brutal by the day. But what compensates for all of that is the joy of knowing that you are fighting for a cause that is bigger than yourself and a just cause that will advance our civilization. That's another thing we need to realize is just how important all of this is. I had a discussion with a colleague a few months ago, and it really was an eye-opener for me. And it basically comes down to this. Ask yourselves, what would it be like to be living 500 years from now? 500 years of technological advances into the future. Think about that. I'm sure they will have conquered the aging process by then. Think of all of the magnificent technology that will be available. We'll probably be exploring the galaxy. Think about 500 years of technological advancement. Now remember this. The Roman civilization had a very clear understanding of hydraulics. They had a clear understanding of electricity. They had invented the steam engine. They hadn't put it to practical use yet. Civil engineering had reached heights. And when all of that collapsed, we lost all of that for well over 500 years. The continuance of the progress that a free society makes possible is absolutely essential. And had that Roman Republic not failed, we would probably be 500 years further advanced than we are today, because all of that knowledge was lost. It's just something to think about and to realize that this stuff really does matter, particularly as you see the very foundations of this American Republic and all of the principles that Lincoln said made this the last best hope of mankind on this earth are now under fundamental attack.
So I think the one key advice from the congressman is don't ask for permission. So I know we have a limited amount of time left, and so I want to open up the floor for questions and see if there's someone who would like to ask the congressman a question.
My pleasure. Right. Well, we look back at our heritage with pride. We all do. That's just human nature. But we look ahead as one people, the American people, and that's that. Look to the very motto of our country: "E pluribus unum," from many one, from many nations one great nation, the American nation. From many peoples, one great people, the American people. From many races, one race, the American race. We spend so much, and I've noticed this over the past 15, 20 years. We spend more and more time focusing on our divisions, what makes us different, rather than focusing on all of those things that we have in common. One path divides us, the other path unites us. And I worry that we're not turning that great American motto that has served this nation so well for so long into exactly the opposite. E unum pluribus, from one, many. Whoever's telling you that is an idiot. Okay? I mean, so don't listen to them. We are Americans, and we are united behind. And what makes us Americans is not that we are simply here, not that we were born here, not that we have arrived at these shores and are here today. That doesn't make us Americans. What makes us an American is an abiding belief in the foundations of the American Republic, of those principles that were set forth in the American Declaration of Independence and have been a beacon and a hope, not only for our nation, but for all mankind.
Thank you for making that point. There's a question in the back.
Well, what were they writing? They were writing all men are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Lincoln said, look, because the argument that the American founding was only for white males, that was the same argument that was made by Stephen Douglas and the Confederacy 150 years ago. Abraham Lincoln totally dismantled that in a very famous speech he gave at Cooper Union Institute in New York in 1860, where he took every one of the founders and traced what were the votes they cast on various issues. And they were all adamantly opposed to slavery. What he said was this, that they were born into a society where slavery existed, and they realized that it would be a generational thing to rid themselves of it. But what did they do? He said they placed our country they placed slavery upon the course of ultimate extinction. They set forth principles and they set forth laws. And it's not just the Constitution, but I mean, you go to the Northwest Ordinance. He traces a long number of such laws to put it upon the course of ultimate extinction. And then in one of the debates he had with Stephen Douglas, he pointed out, in fact, with several of them, he pointed out, he says, I've done a lot of research on this, and the only place where I can find it said that the American founding was only for white males was in the Dred Scott decision, which affirmed slavery, and from Stephen Douglas. He said the American founders were very clear. They wanted to be rid of it. They realized they couldn't get rid of it in one fell swoop, but they did everything they could to put it upon the course of ultimate extinction. So, go back and take a look at what the Confederacy was saying about the Declaration of Independence and about the founding of our nation. It's the same thing you hear today. Oh, that was born in racism. It was only for white people. That is absolute horse manure. And as I said, this is not a new argument. Abraham Lincoln made it crystal clear at the time 150 years ago and did so meticulously and with great scholarship. But this country did act upon it. In fact, we fought a civil war over it. I had an ancestor who was killed at Shiloh fighting to preserve what his brother said was our free government. And I'm very proud of this country for having cast off of that institution and having introduced and institutionalized those principles that have created the freest and most prosperous and most egalitarian society in the history of human civilization. And I'm afraid I am about out of time, so we can take one more question, I think,
Yes.
but then I'm going to have to head
So
out.
I think there's one question left to the side here.
I'm sorry, say again, I couldn't quite hear. Focus on the founding principles that unite us as a people. I mean, these are intuitive if you think about it. I mean, when you go back to the days after Yorktown, when by some miracle we had vanquished the most powerful army on the history of the planet. And we had this moment when, as Thomas Paine said, we can make the world over again. We can put all of the miseries and tyrannies of the world behind us and start fresh. And in order to do that, you've got to answer some very simple questions, but very important questions. One is, what's government? If you're going to create a government from the ground up, what exactly is it? You ever thought about that? What is government? It's all around us. What is it? Well, in a quote that's often attributed to Washington, he said, government is neither reason nor eloquence. Government is force. Like fire, it is a dangerous servant and a fearsome master. That's a pretty profound metaphor for somebody in the 18th century. Fire is absolutely essential to heat your food, to heat your home. Too much of it can burn down your house. But if you think about it, he's absolutely right. Every law we pass, from the law that says you can't punch somebody in the nose to the law that says you got to stop at a stop sign, every single law ultimately ends up with a gun. If you break any of those laws, sooner or later, a guy with a badge and a gun is going to get in your face. So government is force. The next question is, what's its purpose? And that is the question that they answered in 1776 with the publication of the Declaration of Independence. And again, all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It is a uniquely American notion that there is a class of rights that we don't get from government. If we were alone in the world, we'd have these rights. We'd have the right to the fruit of our own labor. We'd have the right to raise our children according to our own values. We'd have the right to enter into voluntary associations with one another for our mutual betterment. We would have the right to our religious beliefs and to practice those freely. We'd have a right to our opinions and to express those freely. You know you have those rights. You know you're born with those rights because you know if there were no governments, you would still have those rights. So if they don't come from government, they come from what the founders called the laws of nature and of nature's God, the Creator. And then they answer that important question. What's the purpose of government? What is the only legitimate use of force by one person over another or by a government over its people? That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The purpose of government is to protect our rights that we get not from government but from nature. We are born with those rights. That is what equal justice under the law means. And that it is those unique notions that make us Americans and make our government unique among all of the democracies and republics around the world. As far as I know, only one is founded on that fundamental principle that our rights, that class of natural rights is derived from our God, our Creator, or our nature, however you want to view it, but that the purpose of government is to protect those rights.
Thank you very much, Congressman,
Thank
for
you
joining
all.
us.
Thank you very much. Sorry.